Welcome back to Your 1230, the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of 12 questions in only 30 minutes. I'm your host, Mike Salitro, and today we are thrilled to be speaking with David Messano. David is from a family of 18. He left the military early for a mentor in the stock market, gave up everything so this mentor could show him how to monetize his passion for fitness. Now he finds himself as a mindset, fitness, and nutrition coach. David, welcome. We're excited to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, of course. I'm going to start at the beginning there. Family of 18, you do not see that every day or pretty much any day. How did your family get to be so large?
Oh, well, so first off, they were Christian. So they didn't believe in any what is it? Any childbirth. They didn't believe any of they wanted more children. And to have more children was a blessing from God in their eyes. So they basically just kept popping them out and it was said to be a blessing of God, and that's kind of how we took it. And yeah, it definitely was a blessing in that sense.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Where were you in the line of the children? Were you in the middle? What number?
Yeah, so I'm number 17. I'm the second youngest. It's wild to be at that spot. It's a kind of a weird spot.
So 18 doesn't even include mom and dad. That's just 18 kids.
Yes, and it's the same mom and dad too.
Okay, that's incredible. That I don't know if it's a record, but it's going to be close. How old is your oldest brother or sister when you're a little kid? What's that like? What's the dynamic like? Take us what's into that house and what it's like for you.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was one of the coolest experiences I had because at the time we grew up in a cult, what I call a cult religion. It was we kind of were separated from the outside world in a sense where everything outside was not we weren't allowed to associate with that. We still were allowed to go into public schools, but we weren't allowed to have friends. We weren't allowed to go over to people's houses. We all always stayed. It was literally my family and that church. We didn't really have things outside of that. So we kind of bonded and grew very close to each other very, very fast. But of course, with a family of 18, everyone has a different personality.
Yeah.
So growing up in that, we had, I want to say it was 13 or 14 all in the same house at once. And it was
Mhm.
literally only a two-bedroom house.
Wow.
Um, yeah, we grew up poor, which was also, I think, in a way for me, I thought it was a true gem to grow up in that sense because it taught me what the essence of grit and having fortitude, learning to do things on your own, learning to make possibilities out of nothing. I think that was the key thing of growing up in such a big family and also having nothing to do or no type of money. We also learned how to just be happy and make things, like I said, out of nothing. But I think the key thing that with that saying of making something out of nothing is that we always learn to be happy with what we had. And I think that is very, very a big impact on everyone's life that they need to incorporate because when you feel grateful for what you've had and what you've worked for so far, everything kind of comes to you at that point. And that was one lesson, even though I'm not very close to my dad, that I will always take from him, is that he always told me to be grateful for what you have because that will bring more of what you have to you. So that was one thing that I think for being in such a big family. We grew up together, we bonded together. We always had the same basketball team. We never had to get anyone outside. We always had the same football team. So we had little sports teams, even though we weren't allowed to play and organized sports. Even though that was everything that we loved, we weren't allowed to play it. But yeah, it was a wild journey, and there's so much to like literally go into.
I mean, I could easily ask you questions all night about that, but there's many other things I want to get into. But I love the way you describe it as, as a kid, you really don't know any different. So you don't know any better. So you kind of assume that that's what being a kid is like in every household. You don't find that out till later. And having that
Mm-hmm.
many people around, you have kind of a ready built community there. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got your friends, you've got your team, as you said, you've got your mentors, you've got your role models, you've got your probably who you're fighting with for that day, you're disagreeing with, and it's your face lights up as you talk about it. So overall, it sounds like a
Yeah.
positive experience. That's wonderful when
Yeah.
you've got that many people in a two-bedroom house. Uh,
Yeah.
so you joined the military. What branch and what age?
So I was supposed to go into the military right after high school because high school for me, like I said, I was born in that cult religion. That's kind of where it started with joining the military. Is I did basically everything they told me not to do. So they said, don't join the military. I did that anyways. They said, don't go to college. I did that anyways. Said, don't make a lot of money. I went to do that anyways. And when I was 16, I decided I was done with that church. I wanted nothing to do with it. And it was very scary in my life because I chose to go out on my own. And I moved away from all family to Vegas. And I was 17. I turned 17 right when I got out there. And I chose that I wanted to do better in life. I wasn't doing very good because my parents were separating. We were going through that whole ordeal of my family kind of figuring out if that church was right and if being in the outside world was actually a harm to us. And it was kind of a scary moment for me just getting out there and kind of realizing what I wanted to do. So when I took that leap, it was definitely one of the scariest parts of my life. I went into school and just changed my whole life when I found fitness. I met Nick Best, and he changed my whole idea of what health and fitness did for you. And it changed me from going to vices like weed and drink at such a young age. And I changed that attention that I put into that and put that into fitness. And that's where my fitness journey started. And I knew I wanted a challenge in life. And I always heard about the Marine Corps. I always wanted to be a Navy SEAL, but I knew I wasn't going to be able, I wasn't fit enough, and I wanted to start with something hard. So I chose the Marine Corps, and I didn't go right out of school because my sister, and that was the scariest part too, is because right out of high school, I didn't know anything. I didn't have anyone guiding me, and everyone's coming up to me like, "Hey, I'm going to this university, I'm going to this college," and I'm like, man, I'm going to this community college, I think. And so my sister got me into this community college that was really good out in LA. It was called Moore Park College. And I went there for a year and I was like, man, like this isn't what I love. I really have a passion for fitness, leading other people and being able to help other people. And because fitness didn't just change me physically, I was at a point where I didn't want to be here no more. And fitness and nutrition changed my entire life. Because when you have that battle of, oh, is there a heaven and hell? And is it okay to go be with these amazing people that I don't feel like are bad? And when you have this turmoil, this battle, it's like, man, you don't really have an outlet. And the only thing you kind of turn to is vices. But for me, I was like, I knew I wanted to be a very successful, impactful person, and to do that, I would need to find a way out of these vices. And that was fitness for me. And I wanted to give that same change to people. I wanted to give that hope. So when I chose to join the military, I joined when I was 20. I quit college. I got a leave of absence for my job, and I went straight into the Marine Corps at 20 years old. And that was a whole nother story, man. I went and I learned a lot. I learned stability, having a schedule, just having routines and the essence of it, being a leader, what that was about. And it taught me so much about my pain ability and also my mental abilities too. And it was like a challenge. It was one of the biggest challenges I went through in my life. And being able to go through that, I would totally recommend everyone to do that, and I would do it again if I had to. But the key thing with that is COVID came in, and I wasn't. I was coming to a crossroads where I wanted, like I said, I wanted to be special forces, and I was at the fittest point of my life. The Marine Corps started holding me back from achieving that and being able to go into what their special forces are, which is MARSOC. And as I started training with that, they took me out of that because I wasn't getting my COVID shot. They were at that point trying to get rid of me. They found a way and they sent me to a mental asylum. And then after 2 weeks, which seemed like an eternity in that mental asylum, they deemed me mentally ineligible and I got booted. And that was just the start of my life there.
Okay. I have a lot of things. I'm taking notes down because I want to follow up on many of the things you
Yeah.
said. So I will do my best to do so. But you've had such a life experience already. I want to make sure I hit the big things that you talk about. The first thing I want you to
Mhm.
do, because I think a common thread that we're going to have here is that you've had life experiences that probably most people that you meet have not, do not even consider possibilities in the way they've grown up. Can you take me
Mhm.
to what it was like that first night in Vegas as a 16 or 17-year-old, away from your family, away from everything you've ever known, and you're in probably the most accessible place in the country as far as you can do whatever you want there?
Yeah. So I went to Vegas as a way to leave my vices. And the reason why I did that is I had did a study, a little research, and I was like, how do you get rid of vices? And I saw a study done by, it was about people who were in across the seas. I want to say it was in Afghan. Don't quote me. It's been such a long time since I reviewed it. But it was people in Iraq, I want to say, that were doing cocaine. And the study was about like what, because when they were doing it in Iraq, when they got back home, they stopped. Like there was nothing, there was no clinging to it, there was no addiction, no nothing. And every like there was, I don't believe there was anyone left that actually stayed on the cocaine addiction. And they said for some reason it was the weirdest thing, weirdest study they've ever done. But these all these Iraq soldiers came back home and all of them just stopped doing cocaine and they weren't addicted to it at all. And I was like, that's weird. And they kind of went into the essence of changing your environment. And that was why I left to Vegas. I wanted to change my scenery, the people I was around, and it worked. I literally changed everything. There was no one that I was around stayed the same. I changed the people I hung around. I started making better decisions, and I didn't have any cling to smoke weed or drink alcohol to feel better. And then I started getting into fitness and lifting weights, and that's kind of where I started getting that high on life. But that was when I first moved to Vegas, it wasn't that scary. I shouldn't say that. The first couple weeks, you're kind of excited because you're away from the chaos and all that stuff. But what people don't understand is when you grow up between the ages of when you're first born until 7 years old, your mind is wide open. So you start building your memory system basically. Things just flood into you and they stick with you for most of your life. So all that stuff that I was raised with was still in there. So going out, just hanging around certain people, it was kind of, man, if I hang out with these people, I'm going to go to hell. This type of mindset. So it was so limiting that I was scared to do anything. And then it kind of held me back. So after about 2 weeks of being out there, that started settling in. And then it started getting really surreal. And it was a constant battle every day to just go outside, and I was very big into pushing the limit and going out and kind of conquering my own fears. But that was the longest one that I've ever dealt with. It lasted for so long, and I'm still dealing with that type of thing because you have that thing always lingering in your mindset of, oh, if I talk to these people or I hang out with these people, I'm going to go to this burning place called hell. And it's like a constant battle. But going into Vegas alone, that was probably the scariest thing, but I knew in order to beat it, I would have to face it. And that was kind of what I had to do is every time I felt fear with it or felt like, oh, this isn't like I'll go to hell for this. I went and hung out with those people. Why? Because I knew that I was trying to get away from that. And the only way to get rid of it is by facing it, in my perspective.
Who did you live with in Vegas? Because you're still an impressionable child. You've done your research, you've lived life, you've gotten into things that some 17-year-olds don't even know about.
Yeah.
How did you besides doing your homework, how did you know where to go, where to live? Who were you there with?
So it was a really weird opportunity. So I lived with my sister out there and her husband. I wasn't just on my own, but it basically felt like that because I wasn't really, they were full time, they worked full time. The husband owned his own business, and my sister was a manager for a Starbucks. And so it was literally basically me by myself. They had two kids, of course, but I was rarely ever intermingling with them a lot. But the key thing is I had came to a point when I was back home, which was a small town called Fairfield, California. And I lived there and I was already going through all that chaos. Like I had almost failed my ninth grade of school. And I was just like depressed. I didn't want to be this failure. I knew I wanted to be great. I knew I had amazing things that I could achieve. And I knew that I wasn't going to be the person to be smoking and drinking and just throwing my life away for nothing. And I knew just the person that I was, I had achieved a lot. I was always a leader in school, always a straight A student. I always did well in everything that I did, whether it was sports, running. I was always a really good runner. And I knew that just remembering all the stuff that I had achieved, it gave me hope. It told me that I wasn't the person I was in that moment. And as I was smoking and drinking, I was like, man, I need to get rid of this stuff. And my sister had caught me one night, the sister that I was living with in Fairfield, California. And she had caught me one time, and I was just so disappointed because she had did everything to help me out. And she caught me and she was disappointed because she was like, man, I've done all this for you. Like, why are you kind of doing this? This is the one thing that I didn't want you to do. And I felt bad. And I was like, man, like, I got to get rid of this. And I just kept doing it. I was like, man, like, I'm just tired of being here. I don't want to be here. And it's a way for me to cope. And she kind of understood, but instead of just going off on me, she kind of helped me and said, hey, like, one of your sisters is looking to help you, and she wants you to move out to Vegas to visit or finish out your high school year. So I was like, she had called me up and she was like, hey, I heard what's going on. Like, do you want to come move out here? It'll be a lot less chaotic. And I was like, all my answers were, I knew that if I told myself if I had an opportunity to change it, I was going to seize it. And that was like my answer immediately. As soon as she called me, I was like, I'm coming out there. So the very next summer, I had moved out, or the end of that school year, I moved out there to start my sophomore year of high school. And or no, it was my junior year of high school, and I went and finished high school straight A student, from a straight S student to a straight A student, just getting into nutrition and fitness. And I would say, yes, that definitely changed my entire life. It gave me an outlet. Putting the right food and the right nutrition into your body to be able to feel right and be better every day, and being able to challenge yourself. And that's what people don't understand about weightlifting and just lifting, or just fitness at all. It teaches you a lot of life lessons about going to struggle, delayed gratification, because everywhere, if you were to work out just a little bit, whatever industry you're in, it'll exponentially make you grow. And that's now what I teach is like, you guys think that it's about fitness. You think that it's about looking good, looking egotistical, but there's a people battling things inside of their head. But the other thing is that whenever you're in an industry, if you were to go into a meeting, and this always happens to me, whatever job I had, whenever I walked into the office, all attention was on me for some reason. And the way the clothes fit, and people are like, man, why do you spend so much money on your clothes? I didn't spend that much money on my clothes. It was the way that my body made my clothes look. And that was one of the key things, is not only did it help me mentally and physically, but in my own industry and in my line of work, it always put me above of the rest of the competition.
That's that. Thank you for the background on Vegas. Thank you for kind of tying in how you were able to move forward and find not only a diversion, but a higher meaning for what you were doing, and a way to channel your behavior into something positive, nutrition and fitness. You
Mhm.
mentioned Nick Best. Where did you meet him?
Yeah, so that's how I got into fitness. So he actually came into my, it was the craziest thing ever, because he actually lives in Vegas. And like I said, it was just another answer to me getting where I wanted to be in life. And I was there, and I chose to start weightlifting because I was a skinny kid, 150 pounds, 6 foot tall, very scrawny. Uh, Looked like your typical weed guy, you know? And I literally was going to weight class. I went in, and I remember my weightlifting coach being this super heavy set guy. And he had told us this story about him getting hit by a car. He was a star lineman for a college, UNLV, had already got big scholarships for other schools, and was probably going to make it to the NFL. And then all of a sudden, all of his dreams disappeared when he got hit by a car, um, destroyed him. But then come to realize his very best friend was Nick Best, and they both played on the same football team, but they both left different paths. My coach was actually at one point stronger than him. He had literally, there we go. So literally, he had been working out with my coach for so long, and my coach was actually a lot stronger than him. But due to this car accident, Nick Best started taking over, and he became the world's strongest man at 50 years old. And I got to meet this dude. He came in, and he, just looking at him, I was like, man, that is exactly what I want to be like. And I remember watching him, and everyone sat down, the room went silent, and he started telling his story about life. And he broke down to all of us, like literally started crying in front of all of us. And I was like, man, this dude is huge. Like, why are you crying? Because, growing up, you're like, men don't cry. That's what you're taught your whole life. Just the total opposite of what should be taught. And this guy literally started crying, saying my dad was abusive to my mom. And then he started abusing me. And all I wanted to do was be able to protect myself and my mom. And that was his whole reasoning on becoming the world's strongest man. And he started at the same spot as me, except he was a little bit taller, weighed a little more. He was 6'2", 160 pounds, and he started his fitness journey and is now 6'2", 350 pounds, just pure mass. And I literally got to witness this, and he had said something that will always stick with me. And he said, if I can do it, anyone else can do it. And then I was like, there's no excuse. All I need to do is just show up and work out every day. And I went from a 150-pound weed kid that was not a straight A student, that was a D student. Within a year, I gained 25 pounds of muscle and I was a straight A student. I got onto the valedictorian list. I started taking over spots in my school and became a leader like I was. And it was just a little word of encouragement that changed my entire life. And people don't understand what little words of encouragement, especially for men, will do for them.
You've clearly had an amazing experience for all the things that you've been able to do, what you've witnessed, the transitions you've made. Now you work with others, coaching them on their fitness, on how they approach their professional careers, their mindsets, what they eat. How
Mhm.
how do you kind of mold them, and who do you work with?
Yeah, so my ideal client that I really love to work with is business people. And the reason why I do that is because they're under a lot of stress. And I, at one point, was starting out as an entrepreneur. As I got out of the military, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and get rid of the 9 to 5. I was tired of working for somebody else and I didn't want to clock in no more. And as I started to make this decision, I realized the stress I was in becoming an entrepreneur because everything's on you and you don't know where to start. So I knew how to work out. I knew when I started in my entrepreneur journey, I started in the car rental space and I did really well. I did for a start out. I was making 7K a month, which was really good. I didn't know what else was left. I was just thinking money, money, money. And then all of a sudden the company crashed. Right. And I knew the stress that was in a business. And as I took the passion that I had for fitness that I've been doing for now, it's over 7 years. I train CrossFit, bodybuilding. I'm certified in Olympic weightlifting. I'm also a certified level 2 nutritionist and also a CrossFit coach. And I knew that I wanted to help business people be able to have the right body and the right mindset to take them to new levels in their business. And I knew the stress that was in their way. And I knew that if they were in a family, it was going to be even more stress. And so, what I wanted to do was be able to move their body so they start feeling good and look at the person in the mirror and be like, that is exactly who I want to be. And I wanted to be able to make the workout so short that they would not really have to worry about taking hours out at a time to go work out. So, I really love working with business people. I love working with college athletes. I love working with people that are aspiring to become athletes. And those are my main clients. I'm working with a few people training for marathons. I'm also training a few people, and most of my ideal clients are going to be business people, people that own small businesses. And usually they have a family too. So I really focus in on them because I know the key importance and how hard it can be to really open a business. And my job and my duty, and I believe my calling, is to show them if they were to eat and move a little more and eat healthy, their whole business is going to change and they're going to thrive in in whatever industry they have, because not only will that make them look good, it's going to make them think clear, which is going to make them make better decisions. So that's really who I hone in on and focus with. But I've worked with a lot of people. Those are going to be my favorite type of people to impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's from everything we've talked about tonight, it starts with having a purpose, the reason why you're doing it. If you can move towards something that either you want to get to or that you see is clearly the right direction, and then taking this holistic approach, understanding that if I focus on this part of my life, fitness, this will have benefits not only for me physically, but it'll help me eat better, it'll help me sleep better, help me in my career, it'll help me with my family.
Mhm.
So when you're working with your clients who have all of those things as well, I'm sure there are some who don't have enough time or struggle to do all the things they want to do or all the things they should be doing. How do you help them prioritize or identify that yes, we can do all of these things to the next level and greater, but we have to kind of prioritize how that happens? How do you help them do that?
So my favorite book that I've ever read was called Atomic Habits. And this is what I think is key with fitness is you have to make certain things a habit. Working out and eating healthy has to be a habit. But if you're talking about people that have never worked out and never ate healthy in their life, it's going to take some time. I mean, if you ever think about when you were a little kid brushing your teeth, your parents had to tell you over and over again to brush your teeth. And it's the same thing being as a coach is you have to tell them to prioritize and help them prioritize. This is why this is so important that you need to do it. And you just tell them over and over again. Because I've learned that sometimes you're not talking to them, you're talking to their subconscious. And you really have to ingrain it inside their subconscious that it just becomes a habit. And once you do that, that's where the win is at because it takes time. And most people think, oh, I'll get this over time and I'll do this really quick. But no, like and my methods are very simple. So I have a three-phase technique. And the first part is metabolic restoration because most people don't understand that diets they actually work, but they just don't work on a broken metabolism. And in order to get your metabolism right, is you first have to make sure you're getting the right nutrients, sleeping right, getting enough water. And those three simple things is eating enough for nutrition, putting in the right foods that you need to be eating. And honestly, the first phase, I don't focus on how much you eat. The first phase, you're just putting that good food in your body. You can honestly eat however much you want. And I actually encourage that because I need to speed your metabolism up. So I tell you to eat more as much as you want because eating more will fast make your metabolism work faster, which will help you burn more calories when you start to shred down. And as we start to do that, they kind of like this process. It makes them excited about it. Like, oh, this is easy. But it's a 3 month process because they have to speed up their metabolism. Then they have to get used to tracking their intake, what they're intaking, because the next phase is going to be your fat loss accelerator. And this is basically where I'm going to take what you've learned so far. We're going to dive down into a deficit of calories. And now, because your metabolism was working correctly, you're going to start shredding off all that weight. And we do that anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 months, depending on where you're at and what your goal is. And then once we get there, I help you implement that into a lifestyle. And that's where we make sure that's going to be a habit now. And we make it simple. We stop tracking, we make sure we maintain, and we just watch what we eat. We make sure we don't intake all this bad food. Not saying you can't eat a Twinkie or your favorite ice cream ever again. That's why I teach that you can do that stuff. You just have to watch the amount, make sure you eat. My simple method is eat more protein, move more, do some strength training, and start eating less. Because people, and this is why I have people track what they're eating, is because they think, oh, I'm not eating that much. But if you were to put a Tweet or Snickers bar next to like an amount of protein, the size proportions are way out of whack. And that's what people don't understand is you're taking in so many calories. But if we were to make some small tweaks to your diet, there would be ginormous changes in your diet and your weight and your mentality and all that stuff. So the way I teach is I make it very simple is we have to take one thing at a time. So the very first thing we're going to focus on is making a habit of eating the right food. And that's very simple. And then sleeping more. So those two first things are the things that we focus on in the phase. Once they feel comfortable and once that's been a habit, then we move on to the next step. I don't want to overwhelm them. And then in the first phase, if it's too much to work out, we don't even work out because drinking water, eating more better food, getting enough protein, and sleeping more is going to change your body. You'll probably lose anywhere from 10 to 15 pounds just by doing that. And then after that, once we get into that fat loss accelerator, we start adding 1 to 2 more things. Because once you start saying, hey, I need you to do this, 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 and this, people get overwhelmed and they quit. So it's adding one thing at a time and basically what I call habit stacking.
I love your simple approach there, the three steps. I know simple as far as being able to understand what it is as a, it's difficult to execute, but that you also make it a lifestyle, that's what you're working toward, that this is not a quick fix. This is not something that you're going to do for a short amount of time. We are doing these things to stack on each other to make it your everyday, your routine, your lifestyle, how you live, as opposed to this is different for this short amount of time. I'm going to go fall back to what I was doing before. Love that.
Yeah.
Somehow, as you look up, we're already at time. I've jumped us around all over the place tonight. But for anybody listening, what's one thing you hope they take away from our talk?
So the one thing that I want everyone to realize, I've been through a lot in my life, and the biggest lesson that I've learned is just don't give up. No matter how hard it gets, if you just keep going, you're going to get to the spot where you want to. There were so many times that I wanted to give up, but I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And then everything that I went through made sense. So if there's one thing that you do take away from this, just don't give up, whatever you're striving to achieve.
I love it. Love it. Where can our listeners find you or connect with you if they want to hear some more or to work with you?
Yeah, so right now I'm very big on social media. I have a Facebook group called Triple V Fitness, and that's basically where I put all the people that are interested. And it's a community. It's not just me. There's other coaches in there. There's people that are enthusiastic about nutrition and fitness, and you can get all the answers you ever want. I'm very big on Instagram. You can find me at David underscore Messano, one of 18. And that's where you're going to find all the key aspects of what I teach, my methods, my whole journey, my own journey. And you can find me on Facebook too, just typing in my name, David Masana.
Awesome. So we will post all those links. David, this has been a blast. I wish you nothing but the best and continued success going forward. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.